Welcome to the Avert podcast, where we talk with some of the most creative people in North Texas and beyond. I'm your host, Michael Gibson Jr. This episode's guest is Danny Gallagher, a freelance comedy writer, blogger, and reporter. His comedy and feature writing work has appeared in the Dallas Observer, CNET.com, Cracked, The Onion AV Club, Mental Floss, manslife.com, AOL, Maxim, and Dollar Shave Club, among many other print and online publications. In addition, he has written for Jackbox Games on several of their titles, including Quiplash, Fibbage 2, and Trivia Murder Party. Danny performs improv comedy for Comedy Sports Dallas and the Alternative Comedy Theater, as well as performing and writing for several live comedy game and panel shows. Most recently, he wrote jokes and sketches for the birthday roast of Stan Lee at the marvelous Nerd Year's Eve, including a sketch starring voice actors Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson, who you might recognize as Pinky and the Brain. We discuss his start as a crime and entertainment reporter in East Texas, becoming a freelance writer in the DFW Metroplex, and his experiences writing for video games and for the roast of Stan Lee on episode lucky number 13 of the Avert podcast. Consider yourself warned.
Hi. I'm waving at the mic. That's my thing. That's going to be my hook.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Let's go ahead and start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you originally from?
I was born and raised in New Orleans. The hospital I was born in was in Metairie, which is like what McKinney is to Dallas. Metairie is to New Orleans. But I grew up in New Orleans, kind of lived all around Gentilly, Uptown, just all the different, we moved around a lot until probably about high school. And then went to school in Tyler, because I didn't really do a good job planning for college. I mean, I did good in high school and knew what I wanted to do, but I was kind of I'll figure it out, the day before admissions start. So I went to a junior college in Tyler. My folks moved to Tyler, so I moved with them. I went to Tyler Junior College for 2 years, and they had a really good journalism program. And, from that I got into UT Austin's print journalism school and stayed there for 2 years, and then just started working at newspapers, wanting to do comedy, but not having the guts to move to LA or New York. But I liked newspapers. I thought newspapers was kind of the news business was a more solid business strategy, which explains why I'm funny. Because I don't know if I'm funny. No, I mean, newspapers were kind of in the beginning of the death throes with, advertising and the internet and the internet getting in the way. The newspaper didn't do a very good job of preparing for the internet deluge in the late 90s. So, newspapers were kind of dying out. So I started, the first job I had was in Henderson, Texas. I went from New Orleans to Henderson, Texas, a town of 10,000 people, but it had a really great newspaper.
Where is Henderson located?
It's East Texas. It's 30 minutes east of Tyler.
Okay.
Because I was told if you wanted to work in a newspaper, you start in a small newspaper, job. And it was the first one I got. And I wanted, and I could have gone to a bigger paper, but they were we wanted you to be in page design. And I'm like, no, I want to write. That's what I want to do. Or I want to report, not write. My first editor made that distinction very clear.
What sort of stories did you?
I mean, it was kind of you cover everything. You cover, the city. You cover police, crime beat. So every day I would do a crime blotter, which was surprisingly active for such a small town. I mean, it wasn't a bad city or anything, but there was a lot of reports to go through. A lot of features, entertainment features, which is what I like doing and ended up doing mostly now in terms of reporting. I mean, it's basically they throw you in and you just cover everything. And there was always even smaller cities out in the outlying areas of the county. So I would get one city that was like even small, like maybe, God, 1,000 people probably. And I would cover that, cover the city council, crime cases, that kind of stuff. And from there, I moved to McKinney. And when I moved to McKinney, that was like a much bigger city. Probably about 100,000 people now. And I was a crime reporter for a good 10 years.
Wow.
And yeah, that took a toll on me. I mean, it's a weird thing. I like the crime stuff. I like covering the crime beat, but after a while, it was kind of like I feel like my soul is dying because I'm reporting on like accidents and trial. And then it was interesting, and of course, every now and then you get the big story, and you have to go like run in your car, so it's like you feel like you're David Caruso chasing down a lead or something. I mean, it was fun, but there were some scary moments that kind of just made me worse, like mentally. I feel like we're getting away from the jovial side of this podcast. I feel like I'm destroying your podcast with this.
we go just pretty much anywhere and everywhere.
Okay.
Is there one story in particular that just sticks in your mind as like maybe one of the big ones or one of the ones?
I'll say there was the biggest one I ever broke was, and I don't want to, it's kind of an infamous case. I don't want to out anybody or mention any families or anything, because they were all very nice about letting us cover it as long as we didn't, overstep our bound, but they were always very helpful. But there was this murder in McKinney that went solved when I went there, it was the first year anniversary. And then I got a tip, I guess about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years later, probably more than 5 years later, I get a call from the police department. And the guy's like, hey, and it's Friday, which is the worst day to get any kind of news because we had to put out the weekend paper or we had to do 2 papers that day. We had to do the Friday paper because we were an afternoon, or not, we were a morning paper, but we had to do that day's paper, and then we had to do the Sunday paper, which was the big one. And I get a call at 5 o'clock on a Friday when I'm ready to go home. And it's like, hey, we're holding something big for you, So I'm just letting you know. And I'm like, well, what is it? And of course he's like, I can't tell you what it is. I'm like, well, you got to tell me because we're on a tight deadline. And he's like, yeah, we caught the guys that did that murder. Wow. And as far as I know, nobody knew about it. So I go into my office, or I go into the boss's office, and I get to say, stop the presses, which, you don't literally say it, but you get to say, like, hey, I've got this story, and, it's way more understated than that. But, that was my stop the presses moment. And then basically we just spent the whole afternoon waiting for them to arrest this guy. Although I did get in my car and do the David Caruso drive around looking for like, can I beat my source to, can I find it before anybody else? But we did get it first, which was nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a huge case. I mean, it was like, I guess part of the reason I hate the crime reporting side was, it was interesting to me. I'm into like that kind of, I love true crime stories and I do, I kind of have a dark obsession with things. You'll notice the skulls and things. I mean, I do have that kind of, I enjoy that kind of stuff, but at the same time, it's like there's real people involved and it's kind of,
yeah.
And I mean, I think I'm good at opening up to people when are listening, because that's really all it is listening. It's like letting them talk. Not just in that, like any story, when you report something, it's like the key is not to talk too much, because when you're not talking, that's when they open up. But, at the end, and I was laid off, I didn't leave, but in the end, it was kind of like half a relief, 75% relief, because it's like, I'm not going to go, I couldn't go back to that. I mean, I can see why some writers would stick with it, because it's really interesting, and, like there's true crime writers that, like, they could dedicate their whole career to one case that, like, wasn't solved, like Patton Oswalt's wife, who passed away. I can't remember her first name. McNamara was her last name. That's what she did. She was like she was an investigative crime writer, and she was working on this big case that hadn't been, like a serial case that hadn't been solved. And, maybe I could do that, but I don't. But even then, I kind of wouldn't have the stomach to do it. I think in the end, I was kind of like ready to do something more creative and less soul shattering. Because it was, I'll admit, it did kind of contribute to my like depression and stuff. Like I started having breakdowns. I would get calls. Again, I don't want to say anybody, but I would cover someone and get calls from the person I was writing about, and there would be threats, and not like death threats or anything, but it would get like, serious. Like I would have to like go to my editor and say, I might need a lawyer up, because they don't like the way we're covering X, Y, Z, and then it would just sit in your mind forever. And I started having like breakdowns, which I didn't know were a thing, but it was kind of like I stayed longer than maybe I should have. And it was time to go. So when I got let go, I mean, at first it was like, what am I going to do for work? But at the same time, it was like, I don't have to do that job anymore. So, which sucked because I loved, when I got it, I was like, I thought I'd won the lottery. Because like, covering crime and like entertainment were like my top two choices. Besides like doing comedy writing. But in terms of newspaper writing, that's what I wanted to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did you end up looking into that job?
The newspaper job?
Yeah.
I just applied for it and got it. I mean, it was, it wasn't any, I mean, it was, it was like a starting out thing. Like I worked in the Henderson paper for 2 years and I was ready to just move to a bigger city and stayed with a friend, while I was looking, because he lived close by DFW, and I was like, I need to be in a big city. I'm tired of living in small towns because I'm from a huge city, and it was just I had to be where people were, I guess. And I'm kind of an urban guy, and I'm not really a country person. Like I need noise. I really do. Like I've started like meditating as part of like my writing practice, and the instruction is like just sit quietly and just listen to the noise around you. And I can't do it because it's like I need someone to talk while I'm doing it. Like I can't get past the part where you do it on your own. I'm still using the instruction, the like audio instructions. So when I got laid off from the paper, I was already doing freelance writing. I started writing for crack.com. That was like my first big job. I mean, I had like small freelance jobs before then, but it was kind of like just stuff I did on the side from the newspaper because the newspaper didn't pay. The newspaper paid well for what it could, but it wasn't, amazing. But when I got laid off, I was already freelancing and I was like, I got to find another job, but I'll do this freelance work to kind of just keep money coming in. And pretty soon I was like, I just want to do this. Like freelance, when I was at the newspaper, I was like, I'd rather just be a freelancer and work on my own and work for places and, do the kind of work I want to do. I mean, there's still jobs I do. There's still writing I do that, is fun, but it's not, if I had a lot of freedom, I'd rather do like all creative comedy writing, entertainment stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just I just kept doing that and then working contacts I had from freelancing, and that would lead to other jobs. And, I've just been doing that ever since.
How'd you end up getting in with the Dallas Observer?
That was a couple of years later. That was actually when I started doing improv. I met someone that worked for the Dallas Observer. And I was coming out of I just had a big job a big writing job. I was writing for a video game blog, and it ended, as they tend to do in the freelance business. And I was like, and it was one of those jobs where I had to work from like noon to midnight or something.
Wow.
Not literally that hour, but it was literally like when the hours you go out to socialize, that's when I sat inside my house. And I was like, I need to get out. And I was, there would be a week that would go by, I wouldn't see another person because I was working so much. I was like, I need to get out and do something. So I found DCH and signed up for a class. And then someone who was in my first class or was freelancing at the Observer. And I was like, hey, can you hook me up? And, she sent me a contact and, just started writing for them. And pretty soon it just kind of became, another just regular gig.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just the idea. Like, I take my hat off to anybody that strikes out on their own and, like, freelances, works for themselves. freelancing, you're working for other people,
Sure.
but, doing it yourself, like...
I mean, it was totally out of necessity. It was like I got laid off and I need work now because I could have drawn unemployment, but I didn't. I just never got around to it. And I had some help, I'll be honest. My folks help sometimes, as you have to in the freelance business.
Right.
But yeah, no, it wasn't. I'm not trying to take like it wasn't a brave thing. It was more like I gotta work, and it just kept going. So, but yeah, no, starting with Cracked was big because that led to like Cracked blew up in a way I never expected. Like that was like the first, like now everybody does lists.
Yeah.
But that was like the first site that did it intentionally funny, if that makes sense. And they were really big. It's almost kind of like they do journalistic comedy because they do opinion pieces like things about movies or whatever. But the stuff I enjoyed doing was the stuff that required like research and was like, that you had to like source twice and get quotes. It was almost like being a reporter / comedy writer. So like one that sticks out in my mind that I liked was like the top 6 real life MacGyver moments. Cause what sparked it was I remember I watched Apollo 13 and there's a moment which through my research I learned was not fictionalized for the movie, but there's a part in the movie where they have to build an air filter because, in the movie the astronauts have to move to the lunar module.
Right.
And there's CO2 leaking in, and the air filter was square, but the unit to plug into the LEM was round. So they literally had to like get a team of people together and put together fill a table with like everything that was on the ship, and they have to build this new filter to fit in the old. And it was literally like they took like duct tape and an astronaut hose, tube and a sock and a Ziploc bag, and I was like, there has to be other moments like this. So I can't remember all of them, but the one I remember most, I think it was World War II. It wasn't the one from the movie The Great Escape, but it was a war camp. They were plotting an escape, and they had to copy a map of the area, and they used like dessert gelatin to like silly putty a map down. So they would take the map and then would put it on this like Jello. This is like British Jello, which is like, I guess, tastes horrible or something. And then would like copy the map that way and then put a piece of paper on that, and then that they could make copies of it. So, but the funny part of that was we would compare it to, well, how would MacGyver do that? Which is how the comedy writing part came in. And I don't remember the jokes, but because it was so long ago, but I love doing stuff like that. So Crack took off really big, and then, it became this big thing. So other companies would start coming to me and saying, hey, would you like to write for our website? So like Spike TV, I wrote for them for a long time. True TV had a blog for a while. I mean, it was basically, and there were a lot of like startup jobs that were like, hey, we want to do what Crack does. Can you write for us? And they would pay me to write for them. And so it just kind of like so I guess that's kind of the key of freelancing is like get one big job and that'll lead to other jobs if you're lucky enough. So I was lucky that way that took off the way it did. And then just tried to keep on writing. And it wasn't steady for a while. I mean, there were times when like I was not working at all. And that was kind of, and with my depression, which I didn't really start getting help for until maybe a couple of years after I was laid off. It was like I didn't want to work. Like I wouldn't go find jobs. I wouldn't go. I'd basically just keep to myself and sleep all day and kind of, which, I know some people may say you're just being lazy, but I kind of was like, I don't know. It was like telling myself, it's like when you're like that depressed, you can only see what's going on right at that moment.
Right.
You can only see what's going on right at that moment, and then the bad moments in between. So like you ignore like, well, you wrote for this great site, and you've done this, and you've been on TV, you've done this and this, and so it's kind of, I still have moments like that. Like it's not something you kind of get over fast, but
You touched on getting involved in improv, which touched off you getting into, the Dallas Observer and stuff. Who are some of your influencers, comedy-wise?
It's kind of weird because I didn't really. I knew of improv. I did some improv in college. There was a Comedy Sports in Austin, and I never got into the main show. I mainly just did the classes. But from that, I transitioned from that into stand-up, and then I didn't really know there was a difference between like short form and long form until I went to DCH. I thought Whose Line and UCB were the same thing. And I mean, they kind of are the same thing. Improv is improv, in my opinion. But getting back to influence, I'm a huge Monty Python fan. In high school, I bugged the drama teacher so much about, I want to do a whole Monty Python show. Like, I want to do all the sketches and things, until I worried, it's making me look like a nerd. Like, that's kind of the weird thing. Comedy's like, I'll get into something, but then when I think it's like going to hurt my image, like okay, I should probably stop. But teenage, you worry about stuff that doesn't matter. Now I don't care. But no, I was big into Monty Python, big into sketch. I love Mr. Show. I didn't discover it until college, but I'd heard about it in high school. I went to a Catholic high school, so it was kind of hard to, be subversive without being a delinquent, because I was very shy and like I did not want to be the class clown, but I did want to be the class clown. I just was too afraid. I was a big fan of, You Don't Know Jack, which is a video game.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Oh God, I was obsessed with that in high school. Every friend I had, I made them play it. I don't know if they actually enjoyed it, just because I forced them. No, they liked it. It became just because it was so. Just the writing was so good. Because like video games at that point, like I don't know if there was writing in video games outside of PC games. So like the Secret of Monkey Island is the first time I remember like laughing at a video game. I don't know if you've played the Secret of Monkey Island.
I have not played it.
It is so good. So it's one of those point and click games, and you play a pirate, or you play a guy who wants to be a pirate, but he's like very like, I don't know if impish is the right word. His name is Guybrush Threepwood, if that makes sense. So he's like a very kind of, I can only compare him to like Carlton on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, except Carlton wants to be a pirate. And it's just the writing was so funny. So like one of the things you had to do was beat the sword master. I think her name was to learn how to fence, because the game is like you're training how to be a pirate. So you have to do you have to complete these different challenges. And the sword fighting, it had nothing to do with sword fighting. It was about insulting the other person. And finding the right insult was like giving a punchline. So someone would say what was the line? Oh, I should know this. Something was like, I'm saying it wrong. I'm just going to say it wrong. But it was like one of your opponents would throw out a line like, I'm going to milk you for everything you're worth. And then you would have to say, how appropriate, you fight like a cow. Like you would have to find like the pun it was like you had to find the joke within the game. So it was like very clever, like puzzles, and the writing was just really funny because it was just very goofy and like it didn't feel like a video game. It was like watching a movie or comedy movie that you were controlling, and the characters were all really fun. But You Don't Know Jack I loved because I'm a huge trivia buff. I love trivia games, which is odd because I don't know anybody that likes trivia games.
I love trivia games.
Kidding.
I'm actually like...
Okay.
I'm generally like a pop culture sponge.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I take in all sorts of things. And like, I was the one, I was the kid growing up. You probably watched that show, The Tick. The cartoon.
Yeah, I love The Tick.
I was the one. There was a scene where I can't remember the character's name. It escapes me at the moment. But the one guy had a puppet, and he made reference to. I forgot what the scene was, but he made reference to like Moby Dick or some literary thing. and everybody just blankly stared at him. And he's like, he called him out. It's like, that's from Moby Dick? Like, read a book! And I'm rolling on the floor laughing because I got the reference.
Right.
But, like, and everybody,
It's funny you mention that, but, like, going through my comedy influence, like, a huge one was Mystery Science Theater 3000. I remember the moment my dad and I discovered that show. We were just flipping around on TV, and we came across it, and it was a movie with the silhouette, and we're like, what the hell is this? Like, we were watching it, trying to figure it out.
Right.
And then we realized, they're making, and it was the Pod People episode, which is like the most famous, it's like the gold standard Mystery Science episode. And we realized they're making jokes at the movie, and then pretty soon we're just laughing our ass off. But I was in fourth grade, so I was probably like 10 at the time. But they were doing that. They were throwing references out to things I had no idea what they were. And every episode is like that. They'll make a reference to something that I have no idea what it is. So I have to go look it up to figure out what the joke is. And in a way, that was kind of good training for, like, being into trivia and doing trivia writing or doing trivia game writing, which we can talk about.
Yeah,
but it was funny. Like, I was watching an episode recently, the Mitchell. I don't know if you're familiar with Mystery Science.
Oh, yeah.
The Joel Hodgson's last episode is my absolute favorite. It's called Mitchell, and it's this really crappy police movie starring Joe Don Baker, and he's just the most unlikable character I've ever seen. Like, he's a drunk. He shoots suspects instead of just arresting them. Like, they're not even, like, going to attack. Like there's a scene in the movie where, like, there's a guy on a warrant, and he's trying to infiltrate this, like, drug ring. And so he's trying to impress the drug baron who's, like, playing golf, and there's this guy that is out on a warrant. It's never really explained, which also explains why the movie's terrible. And he just goes up to him and starts talking to him, and the guy's like, leave me alone, will you? And then he realizes, he's a cop, and he starts running away, and Mitchell just pulls out his gun and just shoots him right in the leg while the drug baron is playing golf. And, of course, it's even funnier. Like, if I was just watching it as a movie, I'd be laughing at that because it's just so ludicrous. Like, he would be fired in a minute, or maybe, I don't know, I don't want to get into that. But he'd be fired in a minute. But then, like, then the bots start talking, like right after he shoots him, the body's, like, sitting right, like, 5 inches from the putting green, and Crow goes, like, he's just short of the green. Like, it's just, like, I want to do that. Like, that's fun. So, like, you don't know Jack and Mystery Science Theater and probably a million other things, like, where you can you have to write like 3 million jokes a minute and reference things that people may not understand, which, I get why that's kind of hard to do, but that's why I like the challenge of it. And I like stuff that's just jokes. Like, I don't mind scenes. I've written sketches. I love doing long form, short form, and even short form. You have to do long form in some instances. You have to do scene work and make it look good. But I love just stuff where it's just jokes. Like, that's the most fun to me. Mainly because I don't have to come up with a story. That's a pain in the ass. And I haven't done it much. But yeah, I love just, like, one-liner stuff. I actually did a roast recently.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great segue.
This was amazing. I so wish I could have been there.
Yeah, so I work... so one of my other live shows is Universal Remote. It started as a ripoff of MTV's Remote Control. I don't know if you remember that show.
I never got a chance to watch it.
It was so fun. I love that show. It was a game show. It was a game show in the 80s, 90s. But the whole premise was it was a game show that a guy built in his basement. Because he was obsessed with games. He always... Ken Ober was the host. He's a comedian who kind of became known for game shows. I'm also a game show aficionado, which helps with the trivia thing. He built a game show in his basement. So the whole set is like... It looks like a basement. There's like a washer and a dryer. And like the podiums are like TV trays. And the contestants sit in Barca loungers. And we did it as a one-off for one of the Comic-Cons. I think it was for Fan Days. It's kind of like a fundraiser. And we were just going to be like, we'll just do remote control and it'll be just a one-time thing. But the group that I do it with, Devin Pike is the leader, is the host. But he's the guy that basically brought us all together. we had so much fun doing it. We're like, let's do something. Like, let's make this a show somehow. And so now we do it mostly at cons. We're trying to build it into a web series and, maybe, do it at, I don't know, comedy clubs or movie theater, do it somewhere. But it's basically, we call it Universal Remote because we're trying to update it to, this was in the 80s when like the game board was a giant Zenith TV. I don't know if anybody knows. If I said Zenith now, I don't know what everybody would mention that. So we do that. So anyway, so getting back to that. So we're going to do Universal Remote at this con, the Marvelous Nerd Year's Eve. Oh, so we were doing this con and we were doing a bunch of other shows for the con to help, bring some entertainment to it. And Stan Lee from Marvel Comics was the big guest. And his birthday, I think, is the 29th to the 30th of December. Yeah. So they had a big birthday roast. And of course I was like, yes, I want to write that because I love roast. Again, it's just jokes, which you don't get to do very often. Or I don't get to do very often because people want stories, which is fine. But it was, I always wanted to do a roast. And so they had a lot of the celebrities that were there, like Michael Rooker from The Walking Dead and Ming-Na Wen, is that her name? From Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Disney's Mulan. I may not be saying that name right. But a lot of like comic book grade celebs. But anyway, sorry, I'm taking a long time to get to the meat of this. I write long, by the way, too. That explains it. So two of the celebrities that were going to be on the panel are Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson, who do a lot of cartoon voices, but they're best known as the voice of Pinky and the Brain, which I was obsessed, which was another Animaniacs, was another show that was like trivia. Like they would do jokes about Bill Clinton, and this was like a kid's cartoon that came on in the afternoon.
Head you off there. It seems like most cartoons were made, had jokes and animation and slapstick and stuff that the kids would enjoy, but it was aimed over their heads at the parents.
Oh yeah, totally. Like the Simpsons were like that. Yeah. Like very early Simpsons, which my parents would not let me watch. And now I'm obsessed with it. like I've learned now, if I become a parent and there's a show I don't want my kid to watch, I'm going to say, yeah, watch it. It's great. And then they won't want to watch it.
It's so cool.
Because if your parents thinks it's cool, then you're not. Or I don't know, maybe it's different now. Anyway, but yeah, no, it was. But that was the thing when that show was on. I followed politics a lot when I was a kid because it was Louisiana. Like it was like the most corrupt state. Like we had David Duke and Edwin Edwards running for governor, and I was 12 at the time, and I know we're screwed. I could have said another word, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you want curse words or not. But anyway, I forgot where I was.
You were talking about Anthony.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So Pinky, the voices of Pinky and the Brain were going to be at this thing, and they called us and they said, hey, we want to do a Pinky and the Brain sketch. Do you mind writing us one? And the head writer was like, Danny, do you want to do this? And I was like, yes. And I immediately stopped what I was doing and texted everybody I know, I'm writing a Pinky and the Brain episode. Not really, but I was writing, I'm writing for the guys I'm writing a script for the guys that do Pinky and the Brain. Because they wanted a sketch. They didn't want just jokes. They wanted to do characters. Because that's what they do. And so the concept I came up with was that Pinky and the Brain are going to this convention to clone celebrities so that so that the Brain can take over the world somehow. And that was a perfect way to do it because it was like we could just go to each one and find a reason to make fun of them. And some went a little too far. In fact, one of the celebrities dropped out. I don't know if it was because of my sketch or because she just thought it was too mean in general. I mean, it was okay. I wasn't upset. But she didn't want to do it. She just didn't feel comfortable, roasting people, which I totally get. Yeah. Because that's the thing about a roast, the way I've always looked at it, and I'm not an expert by any means, but to me a roast is that's the true sign of a friendship, that you can say super mean things about somebody and you're still friends afterwards, because they're just jokes.
Yeah, and then also it's always the people that love you the most.
Yes.
That can cut to the quick and know exactly how to get in there.
Right. The Friars Club's motto has always been, we only roast the ones we love. Right. And that's that sums it up That sums up for me how a roast works. But in this case, we couldn't go like super hardcore. But the trick to doing a roast, I think, is to go really out, to go as far as you can and then say, okay, for this room, we need to pull it back.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of jokes that were just mean for the sake of being mean, but they were clever. I'll say one. Okay. In the Pinky and the Brain sketch. So in the Pinky and the Brain sketch, they eventually they hit up all the celebrities and then they get to Stan Lee and they're like, well, of course we should roast, or we should clone Stan Lee because he's the biggest name here, which isn't that far from the others. And so they try to do a cotton swab of his cheek to get a DNA sample, and Pinky's like, I can't get any saliva. He's more barren than this female celebrity. that was one of the tamer ones that didn't make it. The best one. So it actually was a blessing in disguise because the guy was like, go back, and he came up with some jokes that were more like Pinky and the Brain style.
Yes. Which
I was against because I'm kind of like, it's a roast. Let's go hardcore, let's not be afraid. But in a way it worked out because the pacing was better. And they were very funny jokes that he wrote. Jason Bunch was the head writer. But it I ended up finding a much better joke. So they get to Michael Rooker. Are you familiar with Michael Rooker? Okay, good. Michael Rooker. Yeah, super nice guy. I met him a couple of years ago at another con. Actually, where I met Stan Lee for the first time in person. I did not get to meet him this time. It was chaos at this convention. So they get to Michael Rooker, and Brain's plan is to enlarge him and turn him into a giant, city stomping monster. And the line goes, I'll ride him around Dallas like a giant white trash Godzilla. And that got, and I wasn't like writing it from home. Like part of the challenge of comedy writing on your own is like, you have no idea. Like at least if you're in a room, you can like tell if the other people think it's funny. Yeah. When it's just you, I could read it to myself and I wouldn't know if it was going to get a laugh or not. And going in and watching it we got to watch it, of course, from in the room because we wanted to see our material.
Absolutely.
And I was scared to death because I was like, this could bomb so hard, and I was scared for the celebrities because they were like trusting us. So like if it bombs, it's like nobody's going to know it's me that wrote it. It's going to be on them. But that sketch killed so hard.
And I think it
went so well.
The magic of hearing those voice actors.
Yes, the voice actors were perfect. Like their timing was like, I mean, you could tell they've been doing it for years, but their timing was like perfect. Like we didn't even rehearse with them. We just gave them the script, said, you'll do what you want with it. Yeah, no, their timing was amazing. And of course the voices were like, no, the brain's reading my lines, but you know me, I'm not a smiling person, but I had a huge grin on my face.
I saw that photo online.
Which I had to post because I know nobody would recognize me smiling.
Yeah, I saw that online and I was just absolutely right. Like, it just rubbed me so the wrong way because I knew it irritated me because I knew like how amazing it was and I so wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But circumstances didn't allow.
Sorry, yeah. No, and it was a crowded room, so it might have been hard to get in.
Yeah.
Anyway, but hopefully the video there should be video of it soon because I've been bugging the guy that does that to send it to me. Because I'm definitely going to include it on like resumes and things.
Absolutely.
But that went really well. I mean, pretty much every show, except for one, went really well at that con. Universal Remote was really a lot of fun. I do so for Universal Remote, I write it, but I also act in it. I know it sounds weird to say you act in a game show, but it's like we created almost like a comedy show. So it's like there is contestants, there are questions and things, but we try, like everything we try to do is like meant to be funny. Like we rarely do like a straight question. So I do a character in that show that was created for me called Danny the Angry Nerd. I'm not sure if it's based on me or not, but it probably is. But he's basically like a guy who sneaks into the show to annoy the host, and he pitches show ideas that have already been created. So he's literally like pitching. He's literally like pitching like House of Cards, and it's like a right wing senator named Brad Overlumber. the senator's name is Frank Underwood.
Yeah.
Overlumber. Okay. But I do that, and then one of the fun things I do is the interpretive dance category. I literally act out the lyrics to a song. I saw a guy do it on a British show. His name's David Armand. He's not very well known here. I don't know of something he's done in America, but he does that. He literally acts out the lyrics to a song word for word, and you have to guess what the song is. And I've always wanted to do that. And that always gets a laugh. It always gets a laugh mainly because, I don't have time to rehearse, and I kind of have to rush through it. And I'm not very athletic. It's more physically taxing than I imagine it is. Every time I do it, I'm like, why am I sweating so much? So, con shows I don't know if that's gonna. We're hoping it remains that we're trying to do another show for Frightmare weekend. Because horror theme stuff would be fun, and I'm a big horror movie fan. I've always wanted to go.
What are some of your favorites?
The Thing is The Thing is it's a tie between Evil Dead 2 and The Thing, just because one is kind of, it's horror themed, but it's so goofy that it's almost like a very brave way to do a horror movie. And then I just think The Thing is John Carpenter's The Thing, not the 2010, 11 remake with, I can't remember her name, from Scott Pilgrim. I hated that one, because I love the first one so much. Because it's just, monster movies to me are, kind of boring, because it's we have so many tropes now. This one's like Frankenstein, this one's like vampires, this one's like zombies. I love zombie movies, by the way. But, The Thing is, what the hell is, it's in the title. It's it's just, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, so that's The Thing. And it's just, incorporates, I don't know if you've seen it.
I have years ago.
Okay.
I need to go back and
It's
watch
basically some kind of, alien being that can take on that can morph into people. But when it comes out of its monster state, it's just, this big blob of, human parts. And it's a very, claustrophobic movie, and, I love the Kurt Russell character. Actually, I love the Keith David character better. The ending is so... Oh my God, I wish... I kind of get what they were doing with the remake. So the remake is a prequel, spoiler. But you don't realize that until the end, because you realize that's how the alien makes it to the new base. But yeah, no, that ending I love. So I'm kind of obsessed with grim endings. So I'm a huge Black Mirror fan. I don't know if you've watched it.
I haven't seen the new
Oh my
season,
God. Okay, I tell everyone everyone I meet, if they have not seen Black Mirror, I will sit down and talk to them for an hour about how great. So I love the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I love anthology shows. That's probably the one thing I should try to write, is a horror story with that kind of interesting twist at the end. But it's so much harder to do than. Or it looks harder to do than it is. But Black Mirror, I am obsessed with that show so much. So you've seen the first season.
Yes.
The first 2 seasons. So the episode I always recommend is White Bear. The one where the woman wakes up and everyone is just filming everything with their phones. I picked that one because I explained the concept to someone and they think I'm making it up because it's just so out there. It's how is that scary? Because I saw the trailer for it, and I thought it was a parody of Black Mirror. I didn't think it was a Black Mirror episode. Because it's a great way to do a zombie post-apocalyptic concept. It's people just wake up and they're just using their phones all the time. But then when the twist came, which I won't spoil, my jaw hit the floor. I'm not kidding, I had a nervous breakdown when I realized what the twist was.
Wow.
But at the same time, I was kind of happy to have a breakdown. If that makes, I was so excited to I'm feeling something. And I was watching it at night as I was trying to fall asleep, which is the worst time.
Yeah.
And I just stayed awake so much because I was are we that terrible? But I don't love bad endings. I think grim endings are more fun because there's kind of just a gleefulness to them that you're not supposed it's not it's you're reveling in someone else's pain. It's just right. It's more shocking to see that than to see a happy ending. Although, I mean, there's some movies, you know, like Ghostbusters is probably my other favorite franchise. And I mean, it ends on a happy ending all the time. But, you know, but there's a fun kind of grimness to it. And just like, I like the blue collar concept. Or like, you know, I realized the big joke of that movie, of the first movie, and I did like the new one. I didn't think it was bad. The last third was probably, or last sixth was really dry and kind of like forgot it was a comedy. But with the first one, I realized what's funny about it is when you start, they're like scared of ghosts. And by the end of it, it's like, yeah, it's a job.
It's just like anybody else. Like you know, you go to work.
It's like, we catch the souls of the dead. It's just, just another. Oh, I got another 3-nighter. You know,
and that's what some people tend to think about these really glamorous jobs. At the end of the day, it's still a job.
It's still just a job. That's what I like. The moment I realized it is the scene when just before they hire Winston, is Dan Aykroyd comes in the office and Janine Melnitz is like, yeah, we got, here's some more orders, and Dan's like, oh, great, another 3-peater. Like he's got a name for it now. And they're just about to hire this guy who has no idea what he's getting into, but he just wants a job. And so of course he hands him a big handful of traps. So yeah, no, I love that because I don't know if when they were writing it, if they consciously came up with that arc or it just kind of naturally. It's like a big joke within a movie with jokes. It's. I love that because I don't know if you can do that on purpose or if you just discover it later that you know what I mean. Like if it's just like organically becomes the thing. I've had a lot of time to think about this.
Well, as we're wrapping up, we've talked about a lot of things. I do want to first touch on
we didn't get to the
video games.
Yeah. No, that's another good twist. I'm going to force a segue into it. But it's, so You Don't Know Jack, as I mentioned, was made by a company called Jellyvision, up in Chicago. And I, as long as I can remember, was trying to send them letters. Please let me write for one of your games. I really want to work for you guys. And finally, I had a total coincidence. So as I was working at the McKinney paper, a comedy troupe was coming into town to perform from I.O. in Chicago. And I was interviewing them and doing a story. And one of the guys that I interviewed is the head writer at Jackbox. And I remember this conversation because I was interviewing him on the phone and he was mentioning like, and I work at a game company. And I knew they were in Chicago. So I work at a game company. I go, you work at Jackbox? He goes, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, oh, I'm such a huge fan of that game. Oh, is there a new You Don't Know Jack coming out? Oh, I can't tell you that. And so I just kept in contact. Arnie Niekamp is his name. He does a really great podcast called Hello from the Magic Tavern.
I've heard of it.
Yes, it's famous now. I'm hoping it becomes so famous that he leaves that job and I get to go work at Jackbox. No, I'm kidding. But I just kind of kept in contact with him and just bugged him every now and then. Hey, you got any writing work? And then after the layoff came and I was doing the freelance, they were working on it. They needed researchers for a game that they needed, and I started working on that. And then pretty soon, these Jackbox Party Pack games, started becoming the regular thing. And I worked on the second one. The first game I wrote original material for was Quiplash, which is like a Cards Against Humanity style game where you like pick the funniest answer, but you actually get to write the answers. And it's questions like the questions they sent me were like, come up with the name for a term that describes farting into a bowl of macaroni and cheese. That was, so you have to write a name for that term. And I ended up writing, so basically it was like just write like a certain number a day. And it was one of the most fun times I've ever had writing because it was like I could just do anything. Like I could come up. I mean, there's parameters that you don't want to put too many jokes on one line. I don't want to go too far into but my most favorite one I ever wrote was this just in: the state of Texas elected blank as its new governor, and so you have to fill in the blank. But it was lines like that. And then I wrote for another game called Fibbage 2, which is like a bluffing game, which was more research, more trivia, but like really obscure, like, finding stories of like really bizarre things. And then the one I wrote recently is the one I'm most proud of, called Trivia Murder Party. And it was mostly straight trivia writing with some dialogue writing, but it's a trivia game in which you are kidnapped by a serial killer and he's forcing you to play his game show in his basement. And the goal is not to get the most money, but to basically get out alive. And, but the trivia questions were like, so it was a mix of like kind of dark, kind of horror themed trivia and questions like, which one of the following is not one of the Powerpuff Girls? It was like they wanted a mix of like, questions about, that a serial killer might ask, and then questions that a serial killer may never ask. The funniest one I didn't come up with, we played it I did a game marathon for charity last year, and we played Trivia Murder Party. And the one, I swear to God, I passed out laughing when I saw the question is, what is the phone number for edible arrangements? And and it was for like 1-800 numbers. And I almost didn't answer the question because I was laughing so hard. Because I was like, oh, I want to know who wrote that because it's so simple and so like, who the hell would know this? And it just made me laugh so hard. But yeah, stuff like that. And then they do mini games, and then there's like a big kind of shit. But the thing I love about it is the way it's themed. It's themed like you're watching a horror movie. So there's like a credit sequence in the beginning.
Yeah. And
then it plays out in the horror trope where he tortures his victims, and then there's one kind of big moment when you have to escape. It's really fun. As I was writing it, I was like, I wasn't sure how it was going to work because I didn't know all the pieces. But when it came out, it was easily the most popular game in the new pack, and just I love it so much. It's so well. I mean, everything they did was perfect with it. I really like. I hope I get to do more work for them because they're a lot of fun to work for, and they pay. which is really my prerequisite. Yeah, are we over? I lost track of time.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Another question that I wanted to ask you, as a writer, what's probably your favorite joke that you've written?
Oh.
Just period.
I mean, right now it's the white trash Godzilla one because I had no idea it was going to get as big a laugh as it got. Oh man, I got to think about this.
And also,
go ahead. Oh, there was another part. Okay.
You said you've done stand-up before, too.
Yeah, very little.
Is there a joke that you've written that, due to the way time has gone, has become, like, obsolete, that's, like, one of your favorite ones, but you can't really do it anymore?
You mean stand-up or just in general?
Either way.
Man, I was not prepared for this.
So it makes it a great job.
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Great question, yeah.
The thing about it that's weird with what I do is, like, with stand-up, I kind of... One, I don't think I had the chops to do it, because it requires a kind of confidence that I just don't have. So, and two, as a writer, I write so much stuff that I forget it in a week. Like, I don't remember anything that I've written. Let me think. Well, the first one... what about my favorite piece? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay. The piece I'm probably most proud of is one I did for The Observer, in which I went to the Exotica porn convention. I challenged I'm a huge sociophobe. I don't know if that's the term, but I'm very uncomfortable, or I'm learning how to be more comfortable in social situations. And when I do stories that are like, don't ever do that, that's when I think I'm funniest because I don't have control, and that's just funny. But I challenged myself to ask out as many porn stars as I could. and the first one, God bless her, and I don't care if I know people, Gianna Michaels, I think is her name, Gianna Michaels. I'm not pretending that I don't remember that. I did know her name. I did recognize her. But I went up to her because she seemed the sweetest, and she was the first one that showed up. And I have to ask her a bunch of questions, and then I get to can I ask you out? And I can't get the question out. And she's like, she can tell that I'm like super nervous. Not because she's famous, but because she's like, she knows the question is going to be awkward, and she was super sweet about it. And I finally was like, would you go out with me? And she goes, well, no, because clearly you don't have the confidence to ask me out. And then I was like, well, it can't get any worse from that. But she was super nice. But after that, it like became easy. It was like, okay, they know it's a joke. And also, I didn't think they're porn stars at a porn convention, and I've seen the people that go voluntarily. It's either couples or the creepiest guys I've ever seen in my life. And I've been at police stations. I've seen creeps. These guys will, I'm like, they get asked out, like, being asked out is probably the tamest thing, the tamest question they get. But that one was super funny because just the commentary. But again, like, fear does something that makes me funnier, I guess. It's the lesson.
Spinach.
Yes, fear's my spinach.
Put that on a t-shirt.
That would be, yeah, that's good. And then what was, I forget your other, the outdated question, or the outdated joke. Man, that's a tough one. Yeah, I can't think of one.
I just thought of that question.
It's coming recently to me.
Because
no, it's a great question, but yeah.
Because it popped into my mind, because I had a great joke that I thought it was great.
Yeah,
and it got a couple laughs, but the setup of it was talking about the, what is it? The movie phone.
Yes.
Now we have online, but back in the day you had to call.
You had to call, yes. I remember that. I remember movie phone very vividly.
Way back in the day. And so, what if, like, the premise
there was a Futurama joke. I was watching Futurama the other day, and there was a movie phone joke in there. I was like, that wouldn't be funny now.
But the setup, the premise of it was, the person's doesn't really necessarily know exactly what they want. And so, like, the more they get on, the movie phone guy is getting more and more frustrated with them. And then finally,
it's a recording, which it's...
it's a recording, but, in my thing, it was the actual guy.
Okay.
And so it ended up with him getting so frustrated that his suggestion for the person, he goes, "Hey, I got a movie for you, starring me, featuring you in the butt whipping of a lifetime. I call it Within an Inch, and it starts when you least expect it in a street corner near you." And I'm like, it's so outdated.
And then the punchline could either be, "Yeah, I'd like to see that," or he just goes, "Why don't you just go read a book?"
That's the tag.
That's the end.
Oh.
But as you were saying, I just thought of one. I just thought of an obscure one. The question you mentioned.
Yeah.
That is a great bit, by the way. You should turn that into a sketch.
Oh.
That would be fun. I think that would be funny. Just because it's like just the nostalgia of it would play funny. And just a bit, to me, the idea of a recording getting so pissed off at someone that they somehow overcome their technology. There's a Black Mirror episode right there. No, but to get back to your question, I did a really great cracked article called the Top 5 Stories That Fooled the Mainstream Media. And when I think about that now, it's kind of...
Wow.
Maybe that's too grim a note. There's your grim ending. But it was really like stories that like somebody posted on the internet that they made. But they were all like weird news stories, like, so the big one that ended was that there was somebody concocted a fake story about could like 50 midgets get in a fight with, or who would win, a lion or 50 midgets? And this thing went so viral. I don't remember who picked it up, but it was, I think it was like as big as CNN.
Wow.
And they were like discussing it. It's just, I know it's, and maybe that's not the best PC example, but the thing with cracked is like, they want you to do like examples, and then one big example is like a closer. And I was like, I can't beat a lion versus 50 midgets. And I don't remember who won. That was fun. I don't remember the ending. I think the lion won, but I can't be sure of that.
I mean,
that was it. And that was it. So I did that article, and then years later, it has nothing to do with me, but I just remembered it. Years later, I watched the Ricky Gervais show on HBO. They did the anime. That came up in one of their segments. Like Stephen Merchant brought it up and thought it was a real story.
Oh.
And the thing was, I love Ricky Gervais. I love that show. But that moment wasn't fun to me because I'm like, it's fake. Like the whole time I'm saying, this is fake.
Yeah.
This is fake. Even though like Carl Pilkington is being funny, it totally ruined it for me. So, yeah, I'd catch your breath after that. That took me for a little ride too.
I guess is our, in wrapping up.
Yeah. No, I know we're trying to. Sorry. Yeah.
No. This
Cool.
has been amazing.
Thanks. Thank you.
Probably the last question that I have for you.
Oh, okay.
As somebody that's pretty much been like, a writer, jack of all trades, like, what would you suggest to people trying to break into any sort of writing via
Marry rich. No, it's I mean it's a cliche, but I mean it's just you just gotta write. You just gotta not worry about like, is this gonna get published? Is this gonna be is this gonna be something? I mean, I was lucky in that I was kind of doing that to begin with, and then just I knew the right person who could get me into one thing, and it became another thing. But I mean, literally, it's just like the best thing is just find a place. I mean, right. The thing I don't do for myself that I probably should do more is I need to write for myself more.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like why Facebook and Twitter has made it harder, because that's pretty much what that is now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally like how I write jokes. That's kind of like my stream of consciousness writing is I'll find a story about politics these days. And I try not to be one of those guys that's like, oh, look at this, we're screwed. Like I try to like, my rule is like, at least the line has to be funny.
Yeah.
Or at least it has to sound like I'm trying to do a joke. But yeah, writing for yourself first is kind of a good rule. Like just, just sit down and like write a story and not worry about, oh, it would be good at this place. It'd be good at that place. I mean, that the next step is like find a site or a magazine or a place that you think you could write well for. And then, just start pitching, find a contact, start pitching. But first and foremost, like I realize now the way I got my taste for writing comedy was I want to do that, so I'm just going to do it for myself and then show it to my friends and share it, and and that's kind of how you start. Is you say I want to do that, and then you just start doing it, and the rest will come later.
You have any last words you want to give?
Marmalade.
That's an amazing word. Danny, thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you, man. That's just fun. I appreciate it.
No problem.
That's the podcast. Thank you very much to my guest, Danny Gallagher, for speaking with me and providing his insight. You can follow him on Twitter at thisisdannyg or visit his website, dannygallagher.net. Keep up with the Avert Your Eyes podcast by checking out past episodes by visiting our website, avertyoureyespod.com. There you'll find everything you need to subscribe to the podcast with links to iTunes, Stitcher, Twitter, and Facebook, where we can keep the conversation going. What's your favorite party game? Or you can leave a comment or review, like this one received from Hazel S. via Facebook, where she states about episode 12 with Teresa Nguyen, how she loved listening to the entire episode. It was so inspiring, and that she especially liked how Teresa starts each year with a theme or mantra. Such a nice way to look at things. Thank you again, Hazel, for the comment. And if you really like to help the podcast, please take a quick listener demographic survey at survey.libsyn.com/avertyouryeyes. We'll have links in the show notes. And thank you so much for listening. I'm Michael Gibson Jr., and until next time on the Avert Your Eyes podcast, consider yourself warned.